Hello everyone and welcome to SkillCapped. I'm Notorious Dub and today I'm going to be going deep into detail about the most important technique that you need to be optimizing and improving to lower your time to kill and make you harder to hit at the same time. Peeking. And to learn the ins and outs of all the peeking mechanics that are useful in the meta right now, we're going to be breaking down TenZ's gameplay and peeks because he is easily one of the best players in Valorant right now, and it's largely because of his insanely efficient peeks. So today, let's break down TenZ's peeking strategies and analyze how he uses peeks to isolate fights, incorporate movement to avoid being hit, wide swing against solo players, and create insanely unpredictable peeks and re-peeks. And all of these peeking strategies and mechanics can be combined together and optimized over time to give you an insanely low time to kill and make it where you're harder to hit, boosting your KDA and winning you a ton more games so you can climb those ranks. But as always, before we get too deep into today's video, we have to talk about our question of the day. And today I wanted to ask you guys, what's one mechanic in Valorant that you have the most trouble with or you need to improve on the most? I think most people would probably say aim or maybe game sense, but for me right now, it's definitely movement. Recently, I've noticed my peeks could be way tighter. I'm also standing still waiting on my recoil to reset when I could be moving around, and I'm standing a little bit too close to corners whenever I peek them, and all of those little things are making me a lot less efficient in fights and 1v1s. But I'm sure you guys have a ton of different problems than me and way different opinions as well, which is exactly why I want to hear from you. So let me know in the comments down below. What mechanic in Valorant do you need to work on the most? Alright, so first and foremost, we have to talk about the most important peek you should be incorporating into your game, and it's the isolation peek. Now, with the isolation peek, there are going to be a ton of times in games where you have to peek into a ton of different angles of danger. And the goal is to peek perfectly into one angle and isolate the gunfight there without exposing yourself to the other angles of danger. And this is especially useful for defending a bomb site when the enemies are executing it, because enemies clearing the bomb site are often not going to be looking directly at you unless you're holding the angle. And you can now get a kill without being able to be traded out and constantly be able to re-peek and do more damage while maintaining a very high level of safety. And we see TenZ do this perfectly over and over in his gameplay, like in this clip right here. We see TenZ starting off playing a tucked angle in heaven of a bomb site ascent, and he waits on his teammates in tree to make contact before he ever peeks. And the beauty of this peek is that he's waiting on his teammates to make contact, so he knows those people aren't looking at him, and he can now pick up 2 free kills on the executing attackers without actually exposing himself to an extra gunman on the left side of A main, or anyone already in sight to the left side. They can't actually peek him and do damage. TenZ then strings this together multiple more times in the round by instantly dashing across to the right side when he's double peeked by the enemies, only to re-isolate the angle and take the fight on the Reyna without being exposed to the Sova this time. And once again, he performs the same peek on the Sova after killing the Reyna to completely isolate the Sova fight without being in danger from the peeking Astra now. And it's this type of peeking that makes TenZ so great at Valorant. He has insane aim to be able to pick up all of the kills flawlessly, but if he overpeaks just one time and exposes himself to an extra fight, he would really have no chance of doing the insane amount of damage that he pumped out this round. And that's the type of peeking you should be practicing. Even without insane aim like TenZ, just by being able to isolate your gunfights, you can get kills like the first 2 he performed in this round on enemies that aren't even really looking at you. And by peeking properly, you can then get yourself into position to then take another gunfight, and even if you lose that next one, you've already done your job of snagging a kill while giving the enemy virtually no opportunity to actually get the trade kill off on you. And in this next clip, we see the same thing, but in a very methodical peeking pattern that makes it very easy to understand his thought process. So here we see TenZ playing for contact on B main of Ascent late in the round. We see him start by clearing his close corners, and he immediately switches to pre-aiming and isolating a fight in market if an enemy would have been playing there. He then isolates the CT peek, and then the stairs, and then near the switch in the center of the B site. And all of these peeks are perfect peeks to where he's clearing out the angle without actually being in danger. So when he's peeking CT, the person stairs is unable to see him, and switch would be unable to fight him whenever he swings even further to isolate that stairs peek. The problem with this though is that a ton of people just have trouble peeking this way, and it takes a little bit longer than just Ferrari peeking into the middle of the angle. So you have to choose to play a little bit slower and stay quiet so you can take those favorable fights. And the best way to actually practice this is with the spike diffuse tool in the practice range. Simply go over to the teleporter and set up the spike diffuse tool to practice on whatever difficulty you're comfortable with. And practice pre-aiming and peeking little by little so you can isolate all of your gunfights by clearing angles and continuing to sweep the area without allowing the bots to be in multiple areas of your field of view at the same time. And this type of peeking does take very tight movement mechanics, but that's something that you're going to have to develop over time. So go ahead and incorporate it into your game today and start practicing, because even when you're playing, as long as you have this mechanic started in your gameplay, you're going to be getting better at it. So use the spike diffuse tool and deathmatch to tighten up your isolation peaks, and whenever you're in the game, constantly think about isolating your angles consistently whenever you're playing, and your KDA is going to skyrocket because you're getting way more favorable fights each game. Also remember, if you're serious about improving, then go to SkillCapped.com to unlock our hyper improvement system that will teach you how to win more gunfights, master your agent, and so much more. It's also backed by our rank improvement guarantee, so you really have nothing to lose. So come join over 500,000 satisfied members of SkillCapped, improve that KDA, and get the rank you've always wanted at SkillCapped.com. Link is in the description below. Next up, we have constant and consistent strafes during your peaks to make you way more difficult to hit while you're letting your recoil reset so you can get more accurate shots off. And this is partially counter strafing, but it's a much less refined version of it because the entire goal of the strafes are to keep you light on your feet so you're not providing a stationary target for your enemies to take shots at. But you're also buying yourself time to get your shots accuracy to reset, correcting your crosshair, and this is the most effective when you can't fully isolate your targets, you're taking long range fights, or it's a fight where you can't see the entire body of the enemy so you can't really commit to a full spray. And this is one of those peaks that make TenZ so well known for his picks and his one-taps, not because this technique makes him more accurate, but just because it allows him to take way more peaks and get quick shots off without being in as much danger. Where most people would have to fully commit to the fight with bursts or spray downs and have a very high risk of dying, TenZ has a very efficient movement pattern so he can get 3 to 4 shots off against an enemy while still being very safe and reducing his chance of getting headshot. And here we see him do exactly that. In this clip, TenZ is peeking into B heaven of split. In this situation, TenZ is giving himself a very difficult shot to hit, but he's also giving the enemies a more difficult shot to hit as well, where both players can really only see the head and the upper body portion of the enemy person. After every shot or two, TenZ is constantly repositioning and changing his angle slightly to force the enemy to move their crosshair around, making their shot that little bit more difficult to hit. But this movement is also allowing TenZ to have a little time to adjust his crosshair against the much more stationary target, and it's resetting his recoil. And you can constantly see TenZ strafe left or right and even crouch in some cases, just to make his body and head that little bit more difficult to hit. And when you're combining this sporadic movement pattern with your ability to isolate angles with your peaks, you're going to find yourself able to get way more shots off before you die, and the floating bots in the shooting range are one of the best ways to practice the strafing mechanic. Now you are going to want to incorporate this into death matches as well, so you're practicing with the actual angles you're going to be working on in game, but it's great to build a foundation before you actually get there. So set yourself up with a Phantom or a Vandal on the wooden bridge in the shooting range and start off by shooting at one of the targets in the air. Immediately after you shoot, strafe left or right and use that time to correct your crosshair to the next target and take a shot at that one. And continue to do this until you're completely accurate with each shot. Feel free to go as slow as necessary at first. And from there, you're going to want to get faster and faster with your movement to get more accurate shots off in a smaller amount of time. Next, you're going to want to incorporate crouches and random movements, all to make yourself that little bit more difficult to hit. And remember, this is something you're going to be optimizing throughout your entire Valorant career. So learn it now so you can continue to improve and increase your dueling win percentage by making yourself that much more consistent in fights. And then next up, we have over swinging or wide swinging angles. And for duelists and entry fraggers, this is one thing you really need to learn how to do correctly because it's so good for 1v1s and uncoordinated fights. This technique is the most effective when you know exactly where the enemy is, and it's best if you know they aren't going to be peeking you, like if you flash them off of the angle. That way you can get very wide past the corner to an off angle where the enemy has a difficult time actually pre-aiming you, and it allows your teammates to peek from behind you or just get you in a better position to fight. But really, it's going to be best explained through a demonstration, so let's take a look at how TenZ pulls this off. TenZ immediately gets 2 kills in Tree of A side ascent and pressures that chaos by immediately flashing into grass and swinging extremely wide on the angle, never really stopping for a fight. This gets TenZ to an unexpected off angle very wide on the door frame before his gun's out and he's ready to fight, so the enemy can't perfectly expect and pre-aim him because they would normally think he's going to be swinging tight on the right side of the frame. There was no one there, so he does the exact same thing on the next angle by flashing out and getting past that initial angle the Phoenix would be expecting TenZ to be coming from. Instead, he gets way out from the angle and peeks the right side of the generator instead of the left. And this does a couple of things. This gets TenZ in position to fight with his Sage if the Phoenix peeks on the right side, but also allows the Phoenix to clear the angle on the left that he's worried about the most without seeing anyone, and then allows TenZ to swing him from the other side, and that's exactly what happens. Phoenix clears the angle on the right that he blocked off with his flame wall, and he gets completely caught off guard when TenZ swings from an unexpected angle, and he has really no chance in the 1v1, even though TenZ actually isn't using a crosshair in this clip. And this is one of those things that's going to be best practice in game, and when in doubt, always swing to your teammate's side so you can take the 2v1 together. So while you're getting comfortable with the strategy, practice flashing out and peeking very wide with your teammate behind you, but in 1v1s you want to flash out or wide swing past the initial corner that the enemy is going to be worried about and get to a more aggressive position. Because when you force the enemy to worry about 2 angles instead of 1, you're going to immediately increase your win percentage by up to 50% because you're forcing the enemy to pick one of 2 angles to peek. And if they pick wrong, you essentially win by default. Which means if the enemy isn't peeking you or they're forced off the angle for some reason, take the space that they're giving you and force them to be worried about extra angles because you're not just coming from a one-dimensional spot. And finally, we have repositioning and unpredictable peaks. Now, if you've ever played a battle royale, you've probably seen this done time and time again, but it's a mechanic that most people aren't bringing into the tactical 5v5 shooter genre. But it is one thing that TenZ does so well. Once you get a kill from an angle, the enemy team is going to be watching that angle and committing resources to killing you and taking care of that one spot. So instead of re-peeking from there, just reposition and peek from a slightly different angle, like we see from TenZ in this clip here. TenZ peeks out from the right side of tube on B side bind. He takes a 1v1 on a pushing omen, and after picking up that kill, instead of swinging wider to peek hookah, he transitions to the left side of tube. And as he comes out, we see Sky and Garden looking at TenZ's angle, and the rays flying like a helicopter to TenZ's old angle, because they're all scared of that peek. But because of the reposition, TenZ finds himself yet another 1v1 on a full running Sova when he should be getting peeked by multiple people. But they completely ignore it because they're not ready for him to peek from there. We then see TenZ pull off another reposition and finds a perfect 1v1 on a full running Sky, picking up 3 kills, completely isolated in 1v1s, on a 5-man bomb site execute. All because he's playing for unpredictable peaks and repositions, all because he isn't peeking the same angle twice. But of course, he finishes the round off just doing TenZ things, miraculously finding a way not to die and finishing off the rest of the team. And this is one thing you can incorporate into your game right now. Whenever you get a kill, stop pressuring the same angle, because the enemies are going to be expected and your win percentage in the next fight is going to be lower. Instead, fall back or reposition to a different angle to take another peek, so you can catch the enemies off guard and reduce your chances of getting traded out. But remember, if you want to improve, win more gunfights, and get the rank you have always wanted, then check out SkillCapped.com. Link is in the description below. But all in all, these peaks are going to take practice to optimize, and even incorporating them into your game is going to do wonders for you if you're not already. And let me know in the comments down below which of these you're already doing or which ones you need to work on more. And while you're down there, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn those notification bells on, because we here at SkillCapped have a ton more comprehensive premium guides coming your way that you're gonna want to stay up to date with so you can stay ahead of the pack. As always, I want to thank you for spending this little bit of your day with us, and I'm Notorious Dub, signing off.